Hello, and welcome again to another Doug Show podcast. I am your host, Doug, and we're coming to you on this somber Thursday, April the 21st, 2016, the year of our Lord and Savior. Today, well, you can even go back to last night. The news that one of the founding members of D-Generation X, the big 1990s WWE group, China, passed away. And then the news this morning getting even harder. I got the news, got a little update on my phone around 11:45 this morning that Prince had passed away. And that's what we will be spending most of this time talking about. Those two, and just how we react in general when celebrities, especially the ones we care about, pass away. On this mini Doug Show podcast episode, as always, you can find more shows on our SoundCloud page, which is soundcloud.com/Doug Show Podcasts. You can go to dougshowblog.wordpress.com. You can find me on Twitter at Sir Douglas Case, and that is where you can find everything. And this Thursday, the mini podcast was supposed to originally be all about Conor McGregor and the UFC stuff going on with him, whether he was going to retire or not, and now him talking about how he's just upset about having to do all the promotional stuff when he wants to spend his time just thinking about the fight coming up, the rematch against Diaz. And that's what we were going to spend most of today. It's going to be a hard-hitting show. But in light of recent events, we're going to switch it up a little bit and talk about the passing of Prince today. I'm not one to get too emotional when celebrities pass. I don't really care too much. I mean, I'm more of a... and I know he's not a celebrity. He's more of a musician, but he is still famous, so I kind of call him a celebrity. But regardless, sports athletes, wrestlers, especially because wrestlers, like speaking of China, they pass away far more often and younger than most people due to life on the road, taking the beating that their body takes, and then the drug abuse, especially for the wrestlers in the 80s and 90s. Lots of drug abuse, opiates, recreational drugs. All that, the toll that took on their bodies over the years. And some of them OD, and a lot of them heart attacks. So it's the wrestler's death I always feel like it's getting more and more frequent. We had Rowdy Piper recently, which was a hard one. Before that, the Ultimate Warriors. We had Balls Mahoney and Axel Rotten, former guys of ECW, pass earlier this week. Or was it last week? It's all starting to feel as a blur. We had Merle Haggard pass away. We have had David Bowie pass. And now we're seeing Prince has passed away at the age of 57. And for me, I grew up listening to Prince because my mom grew up listening to Prince. And she loved Prince. And she would play the crap out of Prince in our house. We had, in the house I grew up in, we had a big surround sound system with a speaker that was actually in the roof of our bathroom, which was on like not the far end of the house, but a pretty decent distance away from the living room. There was a speaker that ran all the way down, and it was actually in the ceiling, and that my dad put in. So my mom, whenever we were home, would put on music a lot of the time. And she would put on Prince. She had one of his best of albums. And I grew up listening to it all the time. I Want to Be Your Lover. And I think that was one of the songs that was at the top of that CD. Sexy MFs was also towards the top of that CD that she had. So those two songs always stuck in my mind. Besides the hits, like the real hits, like 1999. When Doves Cry, Purple Rain, Little Red Corvette. So I get in the car. I get the notification at 11:45, and I'm just sitting there. I'm stunned, and then I get to 12, and it's my lunch break. So I walk out, get in the car, turn on the radio, and the first song I hear is "I Want to Be Your Lover," and I'm not gonna lie, tears. Had some tears. Was upset, emotional. Was just really bummed, and listening. I'm a Spotify guy. And Prince is not on Spotify, so I had to find other means. So luckily, a lot of the iHeartRadio stations, and I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting in the iHeartRadio studios here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they are my employer. But because they very good, were on the ball, and had 2 stations when I turned over playing nothing but Prince. And so I was jamming out to those, and you keep hearing more and more hits, and you go, oh yeah, Raspberry Beret, all these other songs are getting played, and you go, oh yeah, these are all also Prince songs that you kind of forget about because you only think about the hits like Kiss, and then you keep hearing all these other songs, and you go, oh man, that's Prince, and then you get on Twitter and you're seeing all these other people talk about what Prince meant to them and how sad they are when he passed. And a weird thing I found happening throughout the day, and I had to call my mom. My mom was upset. She loves Prince. Arguably, probably her favorite artist was Prince. And just a mess, or she wasn't a mess, but, I was expecting her to be a mess. She handled herself very well. This was also the week of the anniversary of my grandfather's passing, so she's, usually a little emotional this week. And I was like, man, of all, the weeks that this has to happen, it happens on this week. But she's doing good. But throughout the day, as everyone, I'm seeing stuff, people reflecting on China, and I'm seeing lots of old, WWE videos from the 90s of her in the early 2000s, of her and Eddie Guerrero and DX, and her just being a women's wrestler, even being the Intercontinental Champion at one point. And then seeing everyone talk about Prince and favorite Prince songs and pictures of him on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I found myself missing other people who had passed recently, favorite athletes and celebrities. And for me, 3 came to mind. First was, from a music standpoint, MCA of the Beastie Boys. Now, Beastie Boys is my favorite band. Favorite band of all time. And I still remember, it's almost about close to the anniversary of his passing, but I remember it being a Friday, driving back from lunch with my now wife, then girlfriend, driving back to her car, listening to the Jim Rome show, and he comes out of commercial break, and they're playing Shake Your Rump, which I can't remember if that had been a song they used regularly as a rejoin. But I remember going like, all right, yeah, Shake Your Rump, maybe my favorite Beastie Boys song. And then Jim Rome comes on and goes, oh man, terrible news. Just found out during the break that MCA of the Beastie Boys has passed. And I went, what? Now, he had been battling cancer, and they had just released, I think maybe the year before, they had released the Hot Sauce Committee Part 2. They had to delay Part 1, but Part 2 was actually had all the songs from Part 1, but they had to delay Part 1 because the passing, or the cancer battle that he was going through. And I guess he just passed in his sleep that night. No one really knew where he was in his battle with cancer. It wasn't really publicly spoken about too much at the time, but I remember hearing that, and I remember getting on. I remember being devastated. Like, I had to sit in my car for a good 20 minutes and just sit there and let it all sink in. I remember getting on Twitter and seeing, everyone on Twitter just being like, "Whoa, I can't believe this is terrible," and just seeing people. The Beastie Boys are my Beatles. So when I heard that, devastated. I remember that night, the New York Mets and the Seattle Mariners had all their players' walk-up music were Beastie Boys songs, and I love that. And just like that weekend was a sad weekend, but at the same time, it was like a celebration of MCA and of the Beastie Boys. And it was something that made me happy in a time. It made me get through that time. And, you know, like, I never met MCA. I didn't know him personally. But I listened to their music so much that I felt like I knew him personally. I'd followed the band so long that I felt like I knew him personally. And it hurt. And the idea that there would no longer be new Beastie Boys music, that I would never get to see the Beastie Boys in concert, because most of my adulthood they hadn't really toured or anything. They just played some big festivals throughout the world, but they hadn't really been touring because of the cancer battle and MCA's health. And I found myself today while listening to Prince really wanting to go back and listen to a lot of old Beastie Boys. And a lot of this, and I think it's the music side of it, making me reminisce of when MCA passed and missing the Beastie Boys. So probably tomorrow, I'll probably spend tomorrow listening to nothing but Beastie Boys. And the other one I was really thought of was the Macho Man, when the Macho Man passed. And maybe this has to do with the China connection. But I remember just same thing, people coming out of the woodworks, and it was the same thing with the Beastie Boys. I remember like Colin Hanks posted a lot of stuff and wrote a little blog about what the Beastie Boys meant to him. Scott Van Pelt on Twitter spoke a lot about what the Beastie Boys meant to him. And same with when the Macho Man passed. You see all these people coming out. People I had no idea cared about wrestling. Them come out and talk about how much they loved the Macho Man and his craziness and macho madness. And I remember spending, I think he passed on a Saturday, and I remember spending, I think it felt like a weekend on YouTube. This is before the WWE Network, watching nothing but old Macho Man promos and matches and how great he was and how crazy he was as a character. And I think as time has passed, especially a lot of the stuff with Hulk Hogan has gone on, Macho Man's really become probably my favorite wrestler of all time. And I still love Hulk. And I hope he turns things around and gets his life together. Well, I mean, he's turned it around a lot thanks to $140 million he's getting from Gawker. And also doing us a favor and getting Gawker shut down. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. But in that time that has passed, I've grown. My appreciation for Macho Man has skyrocketed. I still go back at times. Even my old radio show, the Doug Life Show, had an old Macho Man soundbite in the beginning of it. Because he was the best. He was the cream of the crop, and the cream rose to the top. And that was Macho Madness. So, I guess I think we should all take a little bit of time over this next weekend and really remember those. I mean, there's a few celebrities and athletes and musicians that, in my mind, I really think of and I'm like, man, can we just put this person in bubble wrap and put them away so nothing will ever happen to them? Guys like Vin Scully, the longtime play-by-play man of the Los Angeles Dodgers in his final year. I want just to put him bubble wrap and put him away somewhere so nothing can happen to him. Bill Murray, another one. Steve Martin. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Feel the same way about him. Mick Foley. I used to feel that way about Yogi Berra, Yankees catcher, one-time manager. I was like, can we wrap Yogi in bubble wrap and just put him away so nothing will ever happen to him? Paul McCartney. Don't want anything to happen to him. And so this weekend, let's take some time to, think about those people who have meant a great deal to our life and just appreciate them while they're still here. And hopefully they are still here. And, if some band comes, in a city, maybe not to your city, but a city close to yours, go take the time out and go see them maybe one last time. You never know what happens. Call someone. Tell them you love them. Give some hugs, smiles, laughs. Be merry, as Rick James would say. Another past celebrity. That will do it for this short edition of the Doug Show podcast. Look for Saturday, a new one in